Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 156 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. This week's Secret Invasion was a little shorter than the first two, and so this episode of the podcast is also a little shorter, even if it's still over an hour. To start our discussion, I got a message from friend of the show and theme songwriter, Aaron Levitz, who observed something about Maria Hill's death that both Dag and I missed. If you're unfamiliar with the term we use, be sure to go back and check out episode 71 of Welcome to Geektown for more of its origin. He points out that in episode 2, Nick's line of "someone wanted to hurt me, so they hurt her," talking about Maria's death, makes Maria a textbook example of fridging.
Ah, jeez, you're right. Oh.
Aaron added that a better possible read is, they came after my team and she got the closest to stopping them, which would have acknowledged her skill and given her more agency.
Yeah.
But no, instead, Maria died to facilitate a male character's growth. Now, I've talked about fridging on a previous episode. In fact, I talked about the event that defines the term fridging, the death of Alex DeWitt in Green Lantern. But what are your thoughts on fridging in general and of Maria being an example of a fridging?
I came across the term fridging in relationship to a Jason Bourne movie where they axe Julia Stiles like in the first 15 minutes of that film.
Okay.
And that gets Matt Damon's character inspired to pursue whatever the plot was that she had tried to reveal to him.
Mm-hmm.
And once I was exposed to that, there's a phenomenon. It has a name, but it's like once you see it once, you kind of see it everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are a lot of movies that I absolutely love whose inspiration for plot is based on fridging.
Mm-hmm.
And because in the history of film, men have predominantly been, the leaders, the heroes, the main characters, fridging comes with the taint of misogyny.
Yeah.
And so wrapped up in the first episode and seeing Maria die, essentially pursuing Fury's agenda, we know that Maria Hill is a dedicated S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and has been there the whole time behind the scenes. Wrapped up in that, I didn't see it as fridging. I saw it as an unsatisfying end for a really cool character. Calling it out as fridging makes it even worse. I'm not sure I could name a film where the fridged character is not a woman. I'm sure they exist. I absolutely am sure they exist. I'm not saying that I am a connoisseur of all movies everywhere, every when. It's just that having been exposed to it in a certain context, and you kind of see over the course of history, the femme fatales are dying to inspire the manly hero to take up the role of vengeance and conspiracy solver. So I hope that answers the question on my thoughts on fridging.
Yeah, I think so. Just a quick Google search, and I found at least one person's opinion on 2 examples of male fridging in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Fun.
Loki's death in Thor: The Dark World, or death.
Yeah, it does inspire Thor.
And then Vision's death in Infinity War, and what it makes Wanda become in Endgame.
Well, and even more so
in WandaVision.
In WandaVision, and then Mom. Multiverse of Madness.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I could kind of see that. I tend to think fridging usually happens at the beginning of a quest, which Maria Hill dying in episode 1 sort of qualifies as.
Right. Yeah.
It's not the beginning of her quest with the Avengers or is it even an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it is the beginning of this
The
next story.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or Loki dying in the middle was all part of the plan. But Loki's mom dying fridged and got Loki involved.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are far, far, far more examples of women being fridged than men.
Here's a really good example of a man getting fridged.
Okay.
The very first Iron Man,
Oh,
the guy who
Yinsen.
was in the cell with Tony, Yinsen, right? Yinsen said, "Don't waste your life." And he didn't.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool. Not that he died. I mean, that was terrible.
Yes.
But probably a more noble moment of fridging, if we could even align fridging with nobility.
Yeah, I'd have to look at other examples. I wonder how many fridgings involve self-sacrifice. It seems like a lot of times that fridging is usually a senseless death, it feels like to me, or not quite random, but there is no agency on the fridgee's part. And in this case, with Yinsen, he knows exactly what he's doing when he
runs out with that gun.
Yeah, and he knows how it's going to end.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm getting what you're saying there.
Because you can't just call every death fridging.
No, there's criteria that
even if that death motivates a character, just because a character dies and someone else is changed by it and is motivated by it, does not make it automatically a fridging. So, yeah, where that line is hard to say. And that's why sometimes it's hard to see it. That's why I appreciate Aaron's message to me and pointing it out, because I hadn't seen it either. Neither of us had seen it, but somebody pointing it out, you go, yeah, that there it is. And unfortunately, it's lazy. You should be able to find better ways to motivate your character.
Yeah, unless I'm right and she comes back.
Well, okay, fair enough. But yeah, especially when it comes at the cost of a character that I think had a whole lot more potential. The bits we saw of Maria were interesting and were fun, but we could have seen a whole lot more.
We could have, but if she doesn't come back, I mean, Cobie Smulders has been playing this part for 11 years now.
Yeah.
And really hasn't taken a central role. And of course, that comes with every role contract you get. This is a side character. That's part of the job. But perhaps her career has escalated to the point where she's tired of the side jobs and she wants a more central role in her future endeavors.
That's a definite possibility. Yeah. I don't know whether it was her choice or Marvel's.
Yeah. And I mean, just the way media is, you can't really trust any of the interviews because all the NDAs floating around. There's all kinds of stuff where they've said one thing and then the movie reveals something totally the opposite.
Right.
Like Benedict Cumberbatch isn't Khan.
So I guess we should probably get into it and find out who in this episode was betrayed, because that is the title of this episode. And we start out right after the previously on. We cut to Beto, Pagan, and Skrull number 3 about to head out on a mission. And Pagan gives a good line here that I made special note of, which is that you joined for the same reason I did, not fear of the past, but faith in our future. And all faith is built on risk. It's something I hadn't heard before. It's a phrase I hadn't heard before that I can remember. and one I really liked.
You think it reinforces the speculation that the Skrulls started the war and the fear of making the same mistakes is what he's referencing?
That's a possibility, although also just the talk of faith makes me think of the religious zealotry of the comic book version of Secret Invasion and how much faith they have in Gravik and how they treat him like almost a religious figure.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of reverence there, and that seems to be playing into Gravik's character. There's a lot of moments in this episode where you're like, yeah, that tracks.
And Gravik appears to be working towards becoming a super-powered messiah, as we cut to him looking at the what I referred to as the Super Skrull chamber, and he's showing it off to the council and monologues his plan for us.
And says the words we've been waiting to hear since we
Super
predicted
Skrulls.
it last episode. Yep.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter, I wasn't able to fact check this, but if it's true, I think it's funny. Before the Disney Fox merger, Marvel had the rights to use Skrulls, but Fox had the rights to Super Skrulls.
I remember this.
So thankful for the Fox Disney merger on that one.
Yeah, there's a side theory that a buddy of mine and I are hoping for in another future Marvel franchise where Deadpool 3 is all about Deadpool killing the Fox Marvel universe.
Yeah, merging them into the Earth 199999.
I mean, Multiverse of Madness called it 616, so here we
Well,
go.
but Into the Spider-Verse used the correct nomenclature for it.
They did, and that was hilarious. A reference to Tony Stark and Tom
Benedict
Holland.
Doctor
you know what they got
Strange.
going on in Earth 19999. Oh yeah, that issue with Doctor Strange. Yep, that was really good. Yeah, but that's Sony, and Sony is
No.
not Marvel
No.
proper, unfortunately. Leave it to Sony to do better with continuity than Marvel is lately.
Well, speaking of continuity, after Gravik invites the council to join in the extinction of the human race, we get a little more retroactive continuity, filling in some of Fury's past in New York City, 1998, which I'm really enjoying these little flashbacks, kind of filling in the gaps between what happened in Captain Marvel and what happened in the rest of the MCU.
Yeah.
What did you think of Vara's little meet cute with Fury here?
It was pretty adorable. It was just way too cute. I mean, I suppose if you're in the biz of not trusting anybody and being surrounded by shapeshifters, it takes you a little longer to catch up. But just the playfulness of her voice and her words,
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
Yeah.
yep, that's her. It's cool.
And I think her voice is exactly the same as her Skrull version, so that
100%.
also should have been a little bit of a clue there.
Can I get the address of this hamburger joint though, please? Because I miss these kinds of hamburger joints where there's like homegrown local burger joint.
Well, it's in New York in 1998, so you'll need to head into the quantum zone and and there's another continuity callback here in that the intelligence, the information that Vara is giving Fury here says this should put Dracov's men on their heels. And
Yeah.
Dracov, if people don't remember, was the general in the Black Widow film.
And had even been more previously, more further back referenced by Loki in
Mhm.
Avengers.
Right.
So now we know that the Skrulls were behind the intel on that.
Yeah, and since this is 1998, it's after the flashback scenes of young Natasha and Yelena heading back to the Soviet Union in 1995, but it's before Natasha's in the field, so she isn't one of Dreykov's men just yet.
Yep.
But she will be.
It's probably that intel that led to them recruiting Natasha.
Possibly.
Sort of down the line. I'm going to guess like 5 or 10 years away. I don't know. Let's see. Natasha was S.H.I.E.L.D. by 2010. So this is only 12 years before that.
Yeah, and she had to have some sort of career as one of Dreykov's people.
Working for the Red Room.
Yeah. It's a shame we'll never get, that we're probably not going to get another Black Widow movie to fill any of that in.
I mean, we could with the young actress who played Natasha as a child.
Possibly.
Should she want to reprise the role in a few years, yeah.
Yeah.
So, coffee shop.
Yes. So we're at the coffee shop, and Vara points out that she doesn't actually work for Fury. So, because this whole Skrull unit doesn't officially exist, which means any of those HR rules about agents and handlers, just toss those right out the window. And Fury's like, "Oh, really?"
Yeah, I've got that clip up right now, and it's just got him grinning over his cup of coffee.
Well, this is an intriguing proposition. Yeah, the chemistry between those two is really strong.
I found it very delightful to see the softer side of Nick Fury, who has been this diehard badass for 12 years, 15 years now, -5 for blipping, but whatever.
But we get to very quickly see where that relationship has gone, because we cut back to present day and Nick is making breakfast while
watching the Chris Stern show.
Yeah, which is the name of the FXN broadcaster / Skrull council member we met last episode. And Chris is telling us to prepare for World War III.
Yep. Get your guns and your beef, and I don't remember all the words that he said there. Basically, if you're a prepper, get ready. It's going.
Yeah. It's scary how close to actual newscasters that are currently on the air his piece seems to be. And I love how Vara's like, how can you listen to that poison?
Even a broken clot's right twice a day. But at this point, he doesn't know that that's a Skrull.
That's kind of what I was wondering, is what does Fury know about, like, we know that Maria knew who was on the Skrull Council, or that at least the fact that Talos was kicked off of it and Gravik was put onto it. So did any humans know that the UK Prime Minister, the UN Secretary General, this influential broadcaster, does anybody know that these people are Skrulls in the human government?
I would like to think so, but it also ruins the surprise if people are just like ready for that. Like, again, back to my Nick Fury is on top of things theory. Like, if he knew, what's he doing cooking eggs for? Unless he knows about the end of this episode before we do.
Yeah, I think your theory is getting thinner and thinner here. I don't think Nick is going to turn around and surprise us all with, "Oh yes, I've known all along."
Yeah, I like my theories like I like my pasta. Thin. She asked this question here about those eggs supposed to be soft or hard boiled, and he says poached. And it makes me feel like if poached was his style, she would know that.
Well, she does point out that everything cooks differently in space.
I suppose.
And so maybe he got used to, maybe poached did what he wanted when he was in space, and he kind of got used to that.
Excellent counterpoint.
But as she points out, it's been a long time since she's really spent any significant amount of time with Nick.
Yeah, he blipped, and then when he got back, he went to space.
Yeah. And Vara is not happy about this. Now, I say Vara, but Nick calls her Scylla in this scene, which, first of all, made me look up because for some reason I was thinking there was a Scylla in the Marvel comic universe that was a Skrull. But I looked it up and no, there isn't. But I did discover that there is a Vara Skrull in the comics. Or I shouldn't say a Vara Skrull because she is a Kree Skrull hybrid in the comics who believed a prophecy about uniting the two empires, which has eventually now come to pass in the Marvel universe. But unfortunately, she was killed before she ever saw it come to pass. So, unlike some of the other Skrulls who have been named in the show, Vara is named after a comic book character, but very different from the one that's presented here. Although maybe she believes in uniting the humans and Skrulls. It's hard to say by the end of this episode.
Yeah, the Knights of the Infinite, if I'm seeing that correctly. Yeah,
Yep.
That's the comic book group.
And now here's where we get kind of the first hint of her not necessarily being on the same side as Nick, because her phone rings while they're talking, and her entire response is, I don't have that information right now. And that's the end of the call. So apparently she has her own secrets.
Well, we don't see her shapeshift at all. And we know that Skrulls can adopt human forms. So perhaps she is not his wife. Perhaps she is a Skrull impersonating the wife. We know that they can do mind stuff and pull memories and stuff. What if the real Vara is in that chamber at Gravik's little hideout?
That's a possibility. Although we did see her as a Skrull at the end of last episode.
This is true. It's just me throwing out theories to get discounted. I am happy with this.
Yeah, everyone's loyalty is in question this episode, including Fury's own wife. And speaking of loyalties being in question, we cut over to Gravik confronting Gaia. Without actually, saying the words, I think you're a spy for your father, Gravik pretty much says, I think you're a spy for your father.
Yeah, that was a tense moment. And I didn't think she did a very convincing job brushing it off.
No, I would agree with you there. She says in this scene that she's a really good liar, but is she?
We mentioned last episode that Gravik is Fury's counterpart and can tell when a Skrull is lying.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Also, he's got superpowers now, so that maybe just enhances the bit.
Yeah, I wonder at what point he got those powers, because he does show them later this episode. We see the first sign of him being a super Skrull. So I wonder when during this show he's first received those powers. But we don't find that out this episode. Instead, he just says, hey, I'm taking you somewhere early tomorrow, so be ready.
First sign of a trap for me.
Yeah, I probably would have run out of there sometime in that night rather than the next one.
I don't know. But I mean, as soon as they're in the car and he gets that call and he starts saying things over the phone, I'm like, don't message that to your dad. It's a test. You're the only other person in the car who heard that. You're the only other person who could give away that information. You're boned. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to the very end of the episode, but I'll just say that it surprised me in some ways. But the fact that she was tested here was not a surprise. And I do like her using the old school texting. Now, do you think she texted the older guy who bumps into Talos later? Or do you think she literally handed that phone to him and just said, have him read this?
It's a good call. I don't know. I'm not sure if it matters too much.
I don't think it matters too much, but in one scenario, she's texting a fellow Skrull and saying, I need you to get this information to my dad. And in another one, she's almost directly handing it off. It's just, hey, take this across the street to my dad, where she can basically watch the whole thing happen.
Yeah.
I would do the latter, but if she absolutely trusts the guy, I could see her doing the former. But I guess we should get to Gravik and Talos. This is a short episode, but a whole lot happens in it.
Yeah.
It is very, very plotful. As I was taking notes, and I'm just like, okay, gotta note that down. Okay, note that. All of this stuff is important. There is no, just taking a moment and having some talk between two characters. It is all plot driven and vital to what's going on. So it's only 43 minutes compared to over 55 for the other two.
Right.
I wonder if this is going to be the pace for the rest of the show, or if they're going to have another breathing scene or two.
That's a good question. Should we just zoom, zoom, zoom? I can't imagine there's much to breathe on, but we have to talk about things that happen after this moment. So.
Yeah. So they meet at a museum of some sort. I'm not exactly sure which museum that is. I don't think it's the British Museum, although it would have been hilarious if Oscar Isaac just walked by at one point giving a tour.
Man, imagine Moon Knight showing up at the end, just being like, I thought I smelled you guys. Sorry, you're not Egyptian gods or related. I can't do anything here.
Yeah, no power in this case. But good luck making sure that the Skrulls don't take over the world. See ya.
It's a really beautiful painting that we meet in front of here.
Statesman of World War I. Technically an unfinished painting.
Mm-hmm. It took the artist like a decade to work on it and died before he finished it. Yeah.
Yeah. As preparatory work, Guthrie painted a study of each subject separately, considerably delaying the process.
Hard to get that many people in the same room.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that the artist chose to paint that in front of a representation of the winged victory goddess statue. Because that's in the background there.
Right.
And obviously painting these statesmen of World War I as triumphant. The winged victory of Samothrace, or the Nike of Samothrace.
Well, this was commissioned in 1919, so World War I had ended at that point. So they already knew who was victorious before.
Yeah, but it definitely just serves to mythologize the victory.
Well, of course. And that's probably part of the reason why the man who commissioned it, Sir Abraham Bailey, wanted to do so, was to commemorate the politicians and statesmen of Britain and its dominions who held office during the First World War.
A good backdrop for the discussion that follows.
Yes. What did you think of Gravik's interpretation and thoughts about being written in history and all of that he talks about with Talos here in front of the painting?
He definitely comes off as somebody who is dedicated and determined. He would rather have his legacy written in blood all day long, he says himself. So he's definitely a disciple of his own vision.
Yeah, but I think it does, again, point to how far gone he is. Talos points out, yours and everyone else's doesn't matter how many people bleed and die to him.
It makes me wonder what influence his mutations have on his mood, behaviorisms. We know from this sequence here that, at the end of the sequence, he does reveal a very particular addition to his genome, one that we have seen before, and as presented then, showed a success rate in some people who were decisively unstable.
Very true. But at the same time, it feels like Gravik's zealotry was already present before any successful tests had been run on this machine and all of that.
He is taking his grudge against Fury to an extreme.
Yeah. So they head off to the dining area to talk, and Gravik says he'd be doing them both a favor if he just took out Talos right here and now. And Talos suggests an honor meeting, which they don't go into full details on what it is, but it sounds like basically some sort of duel. I'm wondering if we're going to see such a meeting before this show ends.
Very stressful situation for watching this.
Especially since we've already seen the trailer and we know that Talos is surrounded at this point by Gravik's men.
Oh yeah. And that is such an exceptional, deliberate choice on the trailer manifestation to put this scene together, and we all know.
Yeah, we know exactly how outnumbered Talos is, how screwed he is in this moment. But Talos doesn't really care that much. As if you threaten his daughter in any way, he is not going to react well.
Yeah, no, and he keeps poking that too. He's like, "You want to come see your daughter? You should be grateful I haven't sent her back to you yet in a body bag." And that's immediately when he lunges.
Yeah,
and the truth of their audience is revealed.
And I think Talos, he makes an interesting threat here. He says humans are most formidable when they're threatened by a common foe. So if I go and tell everyone about your existence and about what you're doing, you're going to lose the element of surprise and they'll be united against you. But I think Gravik is right in that if Talos does this, humans aren't going to see the difference between good and bad Skrulls. They're just going to be like, okay, let's wipe out all the Skrulls. And so Talos would be the author of their people's extinction.
You can't discount that outright for sure.
Yeah. I mentioned it in one of the previous episodes. Talos is so idealistic and so optimistic about Skrulls and humans living together in peace that I think he's being unrealistic. But maybe I'm as cynical as Nick. Who knows?
And he pokes for the third time.
Yeah, Gravik mentions Gaia one more time, and Talos stabs his hand with a knife and says, "Keep her name out of your mouth."
I wonder if he pulled that from a recent Oscar winner.
I was thinking that I had that same thought, and I was like, when was this filmed? Was it? It's probably less than a year ago. They probably had that in their head. All right.
Some interesting things physiologically here. The knife in his hand bleeds red blood.
Mm-hmm.
Just interesting. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, because we've seen Skrulls bleed, and we know that when they're in their regular form, and Fury points it out, that it's more purple. So when you change to human form, you are changing everything.
Yep.
Which, again, to me says that if you go full human, if you are making yourself undetectable, then at that moment, you probably don't have any superpowers unless you've also had your genome modified to add extremis. As Gravik did.
Yep. But even the blood on the table remains red. And we have seen that when you cut off a scroll's appendage, it reverts to its form. So it could be it was overlooked. That's fine. Totally, it was overlooked. But obviously the theory crafters out there he has had his DNA merged with a uniquely human DNA altering service, for lack of a better word. In addition to what we've seen in the trailer already, the Groot stuff, and what the computer displays revealed about the Frost Beast and
Cull Obsidian.
So there's definitely 4 different aliens interacting with this human indestructibility process. Just the fact that it's stable, like he as an organism isn't completely falling apart and turning into a little bit more than plasmic goo. It's a testament to their science for sure.
Yeah, which I assume is a mixture of human and Skrull science, because we see Dr. Dalton in one of the fracking pods later.
Presumably with her mind having been copied by the Skrull.
Yeah, which I assume that would also be that she would be a scientist herself, the Skrull that took that form. And this have a synthesis of human and Skrull ideas on how to work things. But yeah, we know for sure that Gravik is now a Super Skrull, although I don't think Talos noticed that as he walked away before Gravik pulled his hand out. Why he didn't take the knife out, that seems like it would be less painful, but oh well.
It's a grand reveal to the other people there to be like, oh, he's elevated himself.
He's our super-powered messiah.
Yay.
Now, the first time I watched this, I didn't put it together that the burner phone that the old man hands him was not Talos's to begin with. And so I thought it maybe had been some sort of switcheroo, and that this was going to be how Gaia's working with her father was going to be revealed.
Yeah, we'll see that guy again.
You think?
It's just one of those unsolved mysteries.
I think by the end of the episode it was pretty much solved. I was confused the first time watching it through when the scene originally happened, but by the end I thought I had got it. So I don't know. We'll see. We always have our own theories. I sat there the first time I was watching it and I'm like, okay, where does the old guy go? Where does he go? Follow him. Oh, car passes.
Gone. There are a couple of old guys walking away.
Yeah, I think he was still in the scene at that point. But in the meantime, Gravik and Gaia drive off. And that's the end of that scene. And we go to yet another English pub where Talos is having a nice English breakfast, even if Fury thinks it's a plate of dog food.
Yep.
And even though at this point they're not friends, the rapport between them, the friction, I guess, between them is so well done by these actors. Fury just comes in like nothing's gone wrong. Hey, I've gotten a lead on a new Skrull high up in US government who's here in London. And Talos is just like, okay, so. And I love how Talos is just like, no, this is not how our relationship works anymore.
Yeah.
You can't just not say the words. You have to say, Talos, I need your help. Help me, Talos, because I'm useless without you. And Fury is about to walk off, but he changes his mind at the very end and actually does it. This is the most humiliated. He is hat in hand at this point saying, yeah, you're right. I need you. So yeah. I've got to beg.
Help me, Talos, because I'm useless without you.
Help me, Talo 1 Kenobi. You're my only hope.
No, I'm sorry. In that franchise, you were a jerk.
Yeah, but his lightsaber said badass mother.
Oh, yeah. No. Thinking about it. Yeah, you've got Mace Windu and
Krennic. Director Krennic. But yeah, Fury begs, and Talos says, all right. You did what I said you had to do to get my help, so I guess I'm gonna help. And we get a little bit more of Sonya.
Yep.
Talos tells Nick about the Neptune, and Nick is like, oh, Neptune, British sub, got it. I know who to call. Sonya's pissed at Fury too.
Well, he did give her statue a contact lens.
Yeah. And the little eye patch she puts on Hoot, or now it's Nick Fury.
Yep.
That was just, again, she's having so much fun with this role. Picking up the phone is like, if you have this number, but you shouldn't, basically.
Yeah, she chews the scenery very well.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately for Nick, she can't help too much because she's dealing with her own infiltrator, she says. And judging from the folder she has there and the picture on it, it looks like her infiltrator is Derek, who is the man she was talking to when Fury, Maria, and Talos were listening in. Did you recognize the actor that's playing that role?
Not immediately, but like in 10 seconds, it's going to pop back up again.
Are you a Doctor Who fan at all?
I have appreciated the show in the past, but I would not recognize a majority of its supporting cast.
Okay. Well,
wait, that's the guy that played Da Vinci.
Not Da Vinci.
No, the one with the ear.
Yes.
Van Gogh.
There you go. He played Vincent Van Gogh in Vincent and the Doctor.
And that is one of the most heartfelt, astonishing episodes of that Doctor series.
Exactly. So if you have an actor of that caliber, you know he's coming back.
Oh, yeah.
So I look forward to more appearances by Derek and seeing him and Sonya face off against each other.
Yeah, that will be very cool.
Yeah.
Nice high-tech car there, Fury, with all the touchscreen zeppity boobop in there. This was the car that he dusted off at the end of the last episode, so...
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen the kind of vehicles that he can have in Winter Soldier.
Sure.
So...
Initiate flight mode. Flight mode disabled.
What is working? The air conditioning is...
100%. We flip over to a night scene now. It's crazy how fast night drops from the bridge.
Well, we don't know how long of a drive it was.
That's true.
England is not a huge country, but it's not a small one either. I mean, if they're in London and they have to go to a naval base, that means that they are going to one of the coasts, and London is not on the coast.
Let's drive. But this exchange between them talking about the relationship between dogs and humans and how quickly Fury extrapolates that to humans and Skrulls.
Oh,
and
man.
The back and forth here is priceless.
It's a great scene. The dialogue is, I absolutely love it. Although Talos says, what other interspecies relationship
where it's acceptable to clean up the other guy's poop?
Yeah. And that's basically all pets, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
It's not just dogs, because Londo gets his poop cleaned up by me pretty much every other day, because that's...
Cat boxes, gotta keep them up.
Thankfully, Londo pees in the toilet, but he...
That's good training.
Thank you. He just never took to poop in there. But yeah, Fury is way out of line here when he says he's been picking up Talos's crap for 30 years. Really? Come on, Fury. How can you even think that? That is so like I said, it's just completely out of line. I mean, granted, we have not seen all 30 years from 1995 to 2025. But once you agreed to give these people a home in exchange for basically 20 of them becoming your super secret spy network, I think that's about all the crap you had to pick up for them. Everything else has been a pretty even exchange, if not to your advantage.
Yeah. Another way to read this scene is Fury continuously testing the shapeshifter in the room.
Okay.
If Talos is really there, he's going to be butthurt about it and throw out all the other reasons that Fury needs to validate that, yes, this is actually Talos. Not saying that that's the way it's going to roll, but if I suspected my right-hand man for 30 years of being infiltrated as being a Skrull, I don't think I could call him out directly on it.
Yeah.
I would have to subtly provoke him into giving up information that would validate who he is, while also making him feel like he's the good guy, because I've been an asshole for the last couple of days.
Although, if Talos has been taken over by, one of the more militant Skrulls, unless it happened so suddenly that they couldn't do so, wouldn't that Skrull have Talos's memories and know how Talos would react to it?
Maybe. That's the point of the show, man. It keeps us guessing. Like, what is going on? Who is who? What is happening?
Yeah.
If Fury is being a legit jerk and trying to rewrite the history and just dumping heaps of guilt trip on Talos, then my theory is not sound. And Fury is just
being a jerk,
scrabbling for some kind of leverage.
Yeah.
But if everything is a test, and he even, went so far as to question Scylla about her phone call and then looked again at the phone again, he doesn't trust her.
No, we don't see him pick up the phone in that scene, but we also cut away before he potentially could have.
Yep.
So I wonder if he gave in to that temptation or not. Because obviously you should trust your wife. But at the same time,
when the world is on the line.
Yeah. And she answers mysterious phone calls with, "I don't have that information at this point." And says, it was nothing. Maybe you should at least jot the number down and find out where it connects to.
Yeah.
But at this point, Talos and Fury infiltrate Bob's headquarters.
Commodore Robert Fairbanks.
No. Bob.
Why'd you stop? Because we're here. Where? At Bob's. Bob's? Yeah. Remember?
Oh, yeah. Now, one thing that kind of bothered me in this scene as they're fighting their way in is how all of these Mook Skrulls just instantly change the second they're shot and die. Every other time we've seen somebody die and turn into a Skrull, it's been like, ugh, and they keel over and get that dying breath or have some sort of final words, and then there's maybe a moment or two, and then you hear the sound or see them turning back.
The shape-shifting is so quick.
Literally, they are falling to the ground and they are changing shape, which I understand why they're doing it, because they want the audience to see that Nick and Talos are not killing British soldiers. But at the same time, it felt so against what they've shown us up to this point about how Skrulls work that it annoys me that they couldn't find some other way to make that point. They could have had him shoot them and then walk by their corpses in a moment and pan down and show you, hey, look, Skrulls, or something along those lines, and kept that consistent. If that is my biggest nitpick about the show, then the show is doing its job well. Because I'm not saying plot holes, I'm not having problems with character development. Overall, the show is doing its job really well. But when they get something wrong, or, they do something that itches my brain, then I do have to point it out.
Fair enough, man. This is a really good but brief infiltration.
Mm-hmm. Now, Talos shows mercy once again as he passes Bob's kid, Zachary, and just was like, nope, I'm gonna let him be and walk on. And we cut back to Fury making his way in, and Talos says, where he is, I'm upstairs, just finished kicking Bob's ass.
Yeah, Nick,
come on up, Nick.
Yeah.
So if Nick needed to test Talos earlier, he just would have needed to get him to call him by name. Because Nick versus Fury makes it obvious to him that it's a trap, and he comes in holding Zachary hostage. Now, this confused me a little bit also. Is Zachary human or Skrull?
Human.
Okay. Then why does fake Bob care so much?
Because fake Bob has absorbed all of the feelings and emotions of a Commodore who made his world-ending password his son's name. That's how much this man loves his kid. And I think that transferred over.
And yet he's still willing to cause World War III.
Well,
which will probably kill his kid. I mean, like I said, it's just pulling at me like,
there's the plot hole we were looking for.
That is a little bit of a plot hole, is how much of the person's emotions, how much of their motivations do you get? Do you just get the memories and they come with no emotional attachment to them? Or do you get all of those feelings? And if so, how do you still want to kill the people who that person loves?
There are all kinds of rabbit holes we could jump down here, but I'm going to try and summarize and say that had Zachary been a Skrull, he would have quickly overpowered Nick Fury.
Or at least tried to. A fight would have started, but who would have been the victor could be up to luck and other factors.
I'm still sticking with the kid was human.
I think so too. So the headcanon I came up with was that Skrull Bob has been there for a while, and so has his own genuine feelings towards Zachary at this point. So while he's still devoted to Gravik and is willing to go through with this plan, he probably would have brought Zachary with him, or, something along those lines, and bid, hey, I've been your dad for the last, year and a half. I'm still your dad. Come on. Something to that effect.
It just doesn't make sense that a dude that already surrounded himself with Skrulls didn't put his back pocket man as his quote unquote son.
Right.
Just in case.
Yeah.
The least suspecting person is who the shapeshifter should always be.
You would make a good Skrull.
Well, I mean, Talos had a gun and he was overpowered by the Commodore.
Yeah.
So I think it would have been quick work for Zachary the Skrull to surprise and subdue Fury, which leads us to the plot hole of, well, then why did he leave his son here in the first place? What is going on? Why does he care about this kid? What is going on? Yeah. But yeah, nice computer screen of death going on behind him.
Yeah. Little war games action there. And we cut to the submarine where the captain gets the order to strike. And I like the double layer of infiltration. They have the Skrull there to give the order, and they have the second in command there to be like, look, these are our orders. If you don't follow them, Captain, I'm going to relieve you of command.
Yeah.
Even though the captain is like, I want to talk to CENTCOM, we've got to make sure that these orders are correct. He's got a scroll whispering in his ear saying, nope, these orders are legit. You gotta follow them. Gotta follow orders. And it looks like the attack is going to happen because Bob's not giving up his code word. And we just saw what's happening on the submarine and that they're going for it. But Bob makes the unfortunate mistake of mentioning Talos's daughter. And as soon as Gaia's mentioned, Talos kills Bob. When literally 2 minutes ago, when Fury threatens to do the same thing, Talos wrests the gun away from him. This is Talos's fatal flaw. And because of what happens near the end of this episode, I think that is going to make... I've been having my theory the whole time about Talos and Nick are going to end up on opposite sides. And I think this is what's going to break Talos and send him spiraling to the point of being actively opposed to Nick.
Yeah.
I think he's going to blame Nick for what happens. But we don't quite get there yet. First, Talos has to do his part in what will eventually lead to that tragic ending, as he calls Gaia and says, I need the code word now.
Yep. And she do the thing.
So Gaia gets the code word in time. The launch is aborted, and the second in command tries to launch anyway. Lunges forward and tries to turn the key, and the captain's like, oh, hell no. So I wonder what's going to happen on the submarine after this. I assume that the ones on this mission are given orders to not reveal their scrollness for any reason. So what happens when the sub returns to land? Are we going to hear about a court-martial of some sort? What's happening there?
Yeah.
Then we get our final scene between Nick and Talos as they're cleaning up, getting ready to leave, and Nick asks why Talos isn't with Gravik. Talos says, I'm not with Gravik because I'm with you. 30 years, you still don't get it.
Yep.
Talos is a loyal friend. If I'm right in what this next scene is going to cause, it's going to be a very tragic breaking of the relationship between Nick and Talos. Because sure enough, Gaia tries to run as her father suggested, but Gravik was waiting.
Yep.
This shocked me. I knew Gravik knew, or I suspected Gravik knew, but the fact that he kills her here in cold blood, face to face, just shoots her down and walks away, I was not expecting that.
I thought it was a misstep on Gaia's part to admit that she heard about the failed strike about 7 seconds after it failed.
Okay.
And just from a spy thing, if you're the mole, you don't give away what happened because if I had been her, I would have been something like, I'm going to Taco Bell or some stupid hankering for pizza. I need pizza now.
No. You've got all the scroll produce you can eat at home.
But I just thought that it was premature. I didn't know that he was going to whack her right there. And that definitely came as a very surprising, unceremonious moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if we've seen the last of... I would say we've seen the last of Gaia, actual Gaia, but you hired Emilia Clarke. Have we seen the last of Emilia Clarke?
Yeah, she's in a booth somewhere.
My only guess is that Gaia is going to show up and meet up with Talos, but then Talos is going to somehow learn of Gaia's death.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And then we will see Talos go off the deep end.
Yeah, that will be a sight to see.
Yeah.
But which side is Talos going to be on?
Who knows?
Yeah.
And which side is Vara on?
Good segue.
Thank you. Because she gets a call and leaves. Well, she doesn't get a call. I assume it's a text. At this point, she just looks at her phone and leaves. And goes to a safe deposit box, which has a gun inside. And gets a mysterious call from, according to the subtitles, man on phone.
Oh, geez. But whose voice was the man on the phone?
Even my first time through, I was like, that's Rhodey's voice.
It's Rhodey's voice.
So, yeah, I'm thinking you were right in Rhodey being a Skrull.
We'll see. It's a spy thriller. Of course, they're going to make us flip in our heads several times before we get the complete and full idea.
Yeah, fair enough. I mentioned in the first episode that this show, according to Kevin Feige, is going to lead directly into Armor Wars, which is very much a Rhodey story. Not in the comics, but in the MCU it will be.
Armor Wars, which got promoted or demoted to theatrical film instead of miniseries.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a promotion, but in terms of actual screen time, it's a demotion.
Yeah.
Because I assume that it would have been a 6-hour show similar to this one.
Yeah, but I think Armor Wars is going to pick up where Iron Man 2, when he was facing the Senators.
Mm-hmm.
We're only 5 years away from these people having this tech. Boom, it's been now how many years?
5+ years later.
He said, what was he like? Russia, China, 10 years, Hammer Tech, 20. Come on. I have done what nobody has done in the history of the world. I have successfully privatized peace. But yeah, it's been in universe 16 years since that Senate committee in 2010. It's 2026 now. Depending on when Armor Wars takes place, China and Russia have caught up.
A definite possibility. But what I was going to say is part of his reason for getting Heavy back into using the armor is the fact that he was captured by Skrulls and put in a fracking pod for however long he's been in there. Which to me is one of the big questions, is how long have these people been Skrulls? How long was the Prime Minister a Skrull? How long was the Secretary General a Skrull?
Yeah.
How long has Rhodey been a Skrull, assuming he is currently a Skrull? How long has this plan been in effect?
We're going to find out. 3 episodes to go.
That's true. But for now, we've reached the end of this episode.
I'm thoroughly enchanted with what they've done in just these 3 episodes, less than 3 hours of content between these characters. And the fact that the stakes have so dramatically risen just in this episode alone.
Yeah.
With 3 episodes left, this isn't something that I'm used to seeing in, short form storytelling like this. They usually wait for the big personal falling. The death of Gaia should have been episode 5.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
And so now we are faced with Talos learning of this as soon as next episode, possibly, and going on a rampage and embodying the role of General Talos as he once was in the Kree Skrull War.
Yeah, and we get that moment from Bob earlier in this episode where he says, "You're a shell of the general you used to be." And Bob mentioning his daughter just a second later shows exactly the kind of general he used to be, and we're going to see that when he finds out what's happened to Gaia.
It sets the stage for Fury losing both Scylla and Talos at the end, and that's what causes him to go back to the space station
again.
And that's where we meet up with the Marvels.
Yeah.
I wonder if Ben Mendelsohn is in the Marvels.
There's
going to be a lot to explain there.
I don't think he's been announced as a cast member, but they may be holding that back in order to
Surprise us?
Yeah. And to not spoil the fact that Talos definitely lives through this show.
Yeah.
Because he may not.
Well, just remember, just because Talos is gone doesn't mean Ben Mendelsohn is gone.
True, but I think if Talos dies, I think Nick is going to be there to see it and react to it. And so anyone who showed up later with Talos's face, he'd be like, get that face off of your skull now. I have a very similar reaction to Talos having his daughter mentioned around him.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Talos making a sacrifice for Fury seems to be aimed at here. The way that Talos has just admitted, like, I'm not with Gravik because I'm with you.
Yeah.
I picked a side and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, but again, I feel like the tragedy of Gaia's death is going to break him, and at least for part of the story, it's going to push him against Nick. You know, maybe we'll have an ending where he comes back and redeems himself and sacrifices himself for Nick, but I have a feeling that at least for part of the story, Nick and Talos are going to be on opposite sides, even more so than they were in the beginning of this episode. That was a falling out, whereas I think what's coming is a full-on rift.
I would say that that's justified. Killing Gaia at the end of episode 3 gives us 2 episodes for that rift to form. And then in the last episode, a begrudging, scathing alliance between the two as they both go against their common enemy. Nick Fury to save the world, Talos to avenge his daughter.
Yeah.
And that could end in Talos's death or in him walking away from Fury.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. That wraps up our conversation on this episode. Of course, we'll return in 1 week to discuss the next episode, but in the meantime, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the show as well. You can send those, questions for future scripted episodes, or just comments on the show in general by sending an email to welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome to Geektown, Twitter @Geektown Podcast, or Mastodon @welcome2geektown @mastodon.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome to Geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them,
Welcome to Geektown. Population, us.
Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Lovitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All of their sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.